So it's Pixel 5 time, and for better or worse, this is not like previous flagship Google smartphones, making it a very different proposition for buyers as a result. But is it actually a good device? Let's find out. Thanks for watching 9to5 Google here on YouTube. Remember to thumbs up, hit subscribe, and then tap the bell icon to be among the first to watch our upcoming videos. The Pixel series has often been pointed to as the pinnacle of Android since the first device hit shelves back in 2016, an outright flagship device designed and delivered by Google as they intended. Despite trying to take on Apple directly, the Pixel series has faltered a little over the last 4 years, which Google has decided was a sign to change tactics. Gone is the flagship price structure and therefore some features. It comes in a more modest set of specifications and a more owned software approach. If the Pixel series relied on software before, with the Pixel 5, it's arguably the only component to catch attention. Saying that a smartphone at 6 inches is small feels like a massive contradiction, but based upon the rest of the market, the Pixel 5 feels really dinky and compact. Part of that is down to the expert use of bezels and no forehead this year that houses all kind of face unlock tech, but the lack of an XL variant is one that further pushes that small phone agenda. I will say that when in a case, I do find the Pixel 5 hard to fully distinguish from the Pixel 4a. Thankfully, the added weight is one of the few areas where they do majorly differ. Obviously, without a case, I think it's pretty easy to tell right away that the Pixel 5 has a more premium feel in the hands, whatever that does mean. The lack of colourful power button is disappointing, as it was always a playful addition to previous devices. Although that sort of sage green colour still manages to provide that usual Google character, those side buttons are clicky and precise too, but I would say think of the Pixel 5 hardware as a hybrid of older designs with a hint of a bezel-free future. It still feels like a Pixel, but maybe not in the way you expect it to. The return to an aluminium chassis is tempered, as the Pixel 5 comes with what Google calls a bio-resin finish. In reality, it feels just like soft, textured plastic, albeit a little more textured and spongy. Without a case, it's pretty grippy, which is always a complaint of glass-backed devices. A chassis cutout also provides the device with wireless charging, so no worries about your Pixel stand suddenly becoming defunct. The softer curves I think help make the package feel even more compact, with no detriment to the rest of the design either. I'm lamenting the removal of Active Edge, as I do use it daily, but maybe it might return on a future device. A man can hope. You're probably wondering about that display. Well, don't worry, as it is a solid one, as the retention of the 90Hz refresh rate is one that really helps elevate the Pixel 5 package above many similarly priced rivals. The software also helps ensure this is slicker and sleeker than the competition. As more devices are now coming with higher refresh rate panels, apps have also been updated to take advantage of them. This means that even though a dynamic refresh rate is enabled out of the box, slowdowns are far less obvious than they were when the Pixel 4 series launched last year. Taking a bump down to Full HD Plus is also one that realistically makes no outright noticeable difference on a smartphone screen of this size. Sure, a QHD Plus display is a nice bonus, but this is a fine OLED panel that looks sharp, clear and crisp from all angles. Colours are superb, while viewing angles are similarly excellent. As I mentioned during our initial first impressions, the uniform bezels also are a genuine godsend. It's surprising how long it has taken for Android devices to come with properly uniform bezels on all sides too, and it's a surprising one that the Pixel 5 is the first. The only gripe I have with the display is the brightness levels. Like we saw with the Pixel 4 series last year, it's just not quite as bright as some of the competition, even though it looks substantially better in most cases. Is it bright enough? For most people though, I would argue it probably is. Let's address the Qualcomm Snapdragon 765G chipset now though. In terms of benchmarks and raw performance, the 765G is more or less on par with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 chipset found in the Pixel 3 series. From the outset, this isn't a good look, but such is the exorbitant 5G tax applied to the current flagship Qualcomm chips, this might be somewhat of a blessing in disguise. That would be an empty platitude if the performance were deemed poor. Luckily, the Snapdragon 765G plus 8GB of RAM is absolutely fine for what we'd call general usage, which accounts for about 99.9% of people out there. I've yet to run into any noticeable slowdowns that ruin the fluid Android 11 experience, put it that way. That said, if you come from a device with a more powerful processor and faster UFS 3.0 storage rather than UFS 2.1, then you'll likely notice millisecond load extensions here and there. This is remedied with the 90Hz refresh rate in almost all areas, but if you come from an older Pixel device or lower end hardware, it's almost impossible to tell daily. Being completely honest for a moment, if you switch from flagship to flagship, you'll see slowdowns here and there. Is it enough to break the experience? For me, no. The Pixel 5 runs absolutely fine. I personally see no differences when playing games like Call of Duty Mobile on the Pixel 5 versus the Pixel 4 XL. Should you be using video editing apps like Adobe Premiere Rush, then you might see some differences in timeline exports, but it will be seconds rather than minutes. Of course, we've done a much deeper dive into our top Pixel 5 features and Android 11 itself that will discuss much of the main software experience a little better than I will here, but the differences between older Android versions are far less pronounced this time around. This is clean, vanilla Android, and it's all the better for it. Bells and whistles are not included. The biggest complaints with last year's Pixel devices were undoubtedly the poor battery life at launch. Credit where it's due though, Google has improved things with software updates, although software can only go so far, and so the all-important upgrade to the Pixel 5 series had to be the battery life. I'm pleased to confirm that the Pixel 5 battery delivers in spades. Due to a weird manufacturing glitch though, the internal cell can range from 4000 to 4080 mAh. This is about the baseline for a flagship smartphone at this stage of 2020, but given the adaptive battery tweaks, low resolution display, and more modest chipset, it is a winning combination. I've regularly seen way above 5 hours of screen on time each day with plenty of headroom to spare. In some cases I'll head to bed with 35 to 40% battery life remaining. That is with the 90Hz refresh rate forced in developer options, plenty of Bluetooth usage, and the display set to around 65% brightness throughout the day. With a tweak here and there, I'm almost certain you could achieve 10 plus hours of screen on time on the Pixel 5. Personally though, I won't lament the 18-watt charge speeds, as I just stick my Pixel 5 on a Qi charger overnight. It would have been nice to see 30-watt charging though, as a quick top up without having to wait is always a nice addition and should be a priority for the Pixel 6. We can't talk about pixels and not mention the camera, as throughout my time with the Pixel 5, the camera has been an interestingly different experience than previous Google hardware. Images are still pretty much superb, but the camera magic that the Pixels are known for is starting to wane as the rest of the industry catches up. That said, I still prefer the images out of this device in 9 out of 10 cases over the competition though. One of the biggest strengths is undoubtedly the ability to just point and shoot and nail the look and feel of a scene with little to no effort. It's why I personally insist on carrying a Pixel device with me wherever possible. The Pixel 5 is absolutely no different this time around, adding the new ultra-wide angle lens that has long been requested, and while it's especially late to the party, it's a great setup that is complemented well with a selfie camera that is also equally capable. Google has executed the ultra-wide angle lens especially well. Good optics with the backing of arguably the best post-processing in the mobile space ensures that details are retained throughout an image. There's no vignetting or major softness towards the fringes of images, which is my own personal gripe with ultra-wide shots in general. Another important thing to note is the consistency of each lens colour cast when switching focal lengths. Tones remain identical between the main wide and ultra-wide lenses, ensuring that no matter what focal length you want to shoot at, the results are typically and consistently pixel. Another notable is that when in the camera UI, switching between focal lengths is smooth and consistent, something often overlooked by other OEMs. I'm personally though puzzled by the lack of dedicated telephoto lens, but it's clear that Google is opting to fix it in post with the impressive Super Res Zoom. I can personally deal with this, as often Super Res Zoom does better than some 3x telephoto lenses once an image is processed. Next year though, getting a triple camera setup should really be a priority on the Pixel 6 series. At the front when taking selfies you'll see sharp, clear images, but while the results are good, I've found edge detection for the front-facing portrait mode a little less accurate than on the Pixel 4 series. I'm not sure if this is related to the Soli tech or if it's just anecdotal. However, like the rear camera setup, the front-facing camera nails a shot almost all of the time. One of the most notable differences in images taken though on the Pixel 5 are the processing times after you press the shutter button and head to the preview pane. Will you complain about a couple of seconds of processing before seeing the results though? We'd imagine you probably won't. For reference, an image on the Pixel 4 will process within 1 second. The same scene and exact same image on the Pixel 5 sometimes takes 1.5 to 2 seconds. It's up to you though if you think this is a deal breaker or not. Another major point of contention though is the now aging Sony IMX363 12.2 megapixel sensor. it's starting to become apparent that the team behind the Pixel 5 camera are starting to hit physical roadblocks. Let's hope that next year Google decides to at least bump up to a newer camera sensor to ensure that it remains way ahead of the chasing pack. But then putting that into context for a second, Google is still doing marvellous work with a 4-year-old sensor. If that's impressive, just imagine what could be done with arguably better camera hardware. For video shooters, the Pixel 5 has really stepped up to the plate with video this year, with some added options including cinematic pan, locked focus and active modes. I feel the most interesting and useful to most people will probably be the locked mode, as this snaps onto a subject when zoomed in. I can think of literally hundreds of examples where this will be a helpful addition, like at graduation ceremonies, family weddings and just generally being a tourist. Also on top of that, 4K 60fps is available natively for the first time on a Pixel, and the results are pretty impressive to say the least. I still feel that Samsung's flagships have the edge on the Pixel 5 in terms of sheer video quality, but the exposure, colours and consistency are exceptional here too. Let's talk quickly though about the standard stabilisation first, before we dig into the other modes. This is where the biggest boosts have been made to the video. The combination of OIS and EIS makes for super smooth 4K 60fps video, or any other video for that matter. There's even an active mode which aims to mimic the stability offered on an action camera such as the GoPro. In my experience it works well enough, especially when pushed hard. Although I can't really see a use case in my daily life, all action go-getters might find a way to take advantage though. For wannabe videographers, Cinematic Pan will be a popular new addition. It works by slowing motion down using a higher frame rate so that pans are smoother and more consistent. The end result is fantastic for a smartphone, especially factoring in that you'll be doing this handheld. In essence, video on the Pixel 5 is better than adequate for the first time in a while, especially if you want to go just beyond point and shoot. So before we wrap up, let's go over a few of the minor details, as the return of a rear capacitive fingerprint scanner is therefore one that I feel it might be a step back, but works exceptionally well in a post-COVID landscape. It's fast, it's fluid, it's perfectly placed. It would have been awesome to get an in-display reader, and maybe we'll get one eventually, but for now it's a really sensible return. Also the speakers, they're good, they're not particularly great. There's 2 downward firing speakers on the Pixel 5, but in conjunction with a vibrating display, you'll get stereo audio. It works reasonably well, but there is a distinct lack of bass and the maximum volume is a little lower than many other smartphones. That said, the Pixel 5 speakers are really clear and crisp, even when taking calls, which was a worry ahead of time. Haptics are also one area I think there is a noticeable downgrade over the Pixel 3 and Pixel 4 series. Whereas the Pixel 4 had full body vibration when tapping and prodding, the Pixel 5 feels slightly more hollow and the haptics happen to be very close, if not identical, of that of the Pixel 4a. The haptics are still very good, but they are an unfortunate step down over the Pixel 5. The Pixel 5 is the first 5G enabled Pixel, and it is a bit of an enigma at this stage of 2020 as the rollout continues globally. I must admit I have seen some utterly spectacular speeds on my modest travels around the UK. Heck, I have 5G where I live, but I don't think it's a reason to get excited for a device touting this as a major feature. It's really neat that you'll get support for connecting to ultra-fast networks, but it should never be the sole reason you're looking to upgrade to the Pixel 5. So all in all, is the Pixel 5 worth it then? Well, I think as with all Pixels prior, with the Pixel 5 it might not always be the device you're buying now, it's the potential and device you'll have in 12 months time that is the value proposition here. It's still one of the most unique ways of tackling the smartphone market, and as Android develops, so too does your smartphone experience. With so much competition at the top end of the market, the Pixel 5 still manages a little taste of everything without massively piling on the price. Yes, it could arguably be a little cheaper and a little more powerful, but it strikes a perfect balance for most people out there. For ardent Pixel enthusiasts, this is probably not the smartphone you were hoping or even been wishing for. It's definitely not the most powerful, nor is it the most outright feature-packed. In some areas there are obvious hardware backtracking as Google continues to try and find a foothold in an increasingly competitive and saturated market. Instead, it's a Google Pixel that comes with just enough compromises to make it a solid option for the average buyer. In the US, it does feel a tad overpriced, but still is overall a solid option that manages to fix some previous Pixel-specific gripes. In Europe, with incentives and gifts, it's almost a steal, and on top of that, a solid smartphone to boot. If you're a hardcore Pixel fan, especially the Pixel 4, then we might have to say this is the first device from Google that you should be skipping for some time. For real spec heads, the Galaxy S20 FE is definitely more catered towards you. Those just wanting a good software experience that lasts all day and does everything pretty damn well, then the Pixel 5 provides just enough to be a relatively solid buy. So that just about wraps up our Pixel 5 review. Be sure to let us know down in the comment section below how you're feeling about the latest made by Google phones, and head to the link in the description for an even greater in-depth look at the device and more. But as always, this is Damon with 95 Google saying thanks for watching, and I will speak to you later.